Cool. Rich, have you come up with any problems or anything that you want to speak about?
On the same line, as far as connectors go, I had a vehicle the other day that was a 6-cylinder, had a coil pack with 3 coils on it. 1 coil for 2 cylinders.
Waste spark system.
Right, waste spark system. And it had 1 coil not firing. So 2 cylinders were not firing. All right. And I was checking this thing out and found that the wire from the coil back to the module was fine. I actually did a load test on it. I put 5 amps through that wire, all right, and it tested good. And it looked clean at the connector, at the PCM. I could see the copper color, all right. Afterwards, after making a few other tests, I went back to it, pulled the connector off, put my inspection glasses on, all right, which really magnifies it. I held a good bright LED light in there, and I looked down the bore of that one connector, and I saw something down in there that I didn't like. I went in there with a little Dremel tool with a cleaning tip on it, and everything just shot right out of it. What I had to do, not only clean it up, but now remember, I took some material off that with that Dremel tool. All right, I took some material off. I had to go down there with a real tiny pick and go there and actually re-crimp that and distort it enough so it was going to make a connection. Slap that back together, solve the
Whenever
problem.
possible, obviously, you'd repin, re-terminal that.
If you had it.
As an addendum to that, the fact that he had to put the special glasses on as you get older.
He's old.
Don't be proud. Get the glasses.
You would need them even if you weren't older.
Yeah, that's right.
But that solved the problem finally. And that car was at several shops, by the way.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that fools all of us.
Yeah.
That's good. Remember, guys, you know, this is not only our roundtable, it's your roundtable.
Right.
So please type in or speak about something that you have an issue with. Bear, you had something to talk about, right?
Yep, what I got, I don't know if we got it out or not about the getting air in the Ford Ranger Explorer type power steerings when you're turning the rack with it not running, like when you're doing brakes or something, and then having it get air bound and it's all juddery and it seems to take forever to bleed it out. Well, I got the answer. I forget what publication it was. One of the trade magazines had an article about it, and I have yet to try it, but it sounds like it should work. The easy fix for that is to use your little hand vacuum pump and lower the fluid a little bit and put a vacuum on top of the reservoir with a push cover, or, you know, get an extra cap for it and put a vacuum on it and work the wheel back and forth, and it's supposed to...
Well, yeah, just like a vacuum pump in a refrigerant
Right.
system, taking the air bubbles out of the
you know,
right, same idea.
Get it back to, so it's back to
That's a good idea.
back to normal, and I'm hoping I have one come along just so I can try it for my own curiosity. But it,
Cool.
like Pierre says, it sounds like it should work, and it was one of those things. If you read the publications that are laying around, you can sometimes get answers to your problems.
Good.
Sometimes
Hang on one second. We have Jomar here, had a Jetta from a friend. For years the car was going into limp mode because the throttle body codes being set, but they were too numerous because the throttle body, too numerous codes. Angle sensor, previous mechanic replaced the throttle body and ran a new harness from the throttle body to the ECM. Took a look at it, turned out to be a bad ground where the ECM was located under the windshield, rust and corrosion.
One of the ground. By the way, I found
That's Volkswagen. Very good.
I found 5 grounds in this vehicle. One of them is the one you're talking about, right next to the ECM. There were 3. There's a main ground for the main ground wire from the battery to over to the engine, and it's right underneath the battery. It's not a really good setup in my opinion. In fact, we haven't delivered this vehicle yet, but I'm gonna make a redundant ground to go to the body on this car because that wire's terrible and the owner doesn't wanna pay for a new wire, of course. And I have a second vehicle in the shop actually with a similar problem. But the one that was not shown or looked like it was part of the one next to the ECM was the one that was by the air intake for the ventilation system, by the microfilter. And it was, it was in plain sight once you looked over there. But you had to know it was there. There were 5 different grounds on this car.
These Jettas, I just had one at 2009
5
Jetta.
ground points.
In fact, that I'm gonna write an article on, that the wire itself, the insulation was all good, but inside, like the old GM pickup coils that a copper comes apart, this was a super small wire where the cam sensor signal would sometimes be set or not set. And by the way, the cam sensor on that is a 3-wire 5-volt reference sensor. If you get all of the wires showing you 5 volts, you have an open circuit. The connector is buried underneath, just below where the intake manifold is. And, you know, just doing the wiggle, jerk, feel massage, like play with the wire, I'm like, there's no connector. Doing an ohm check is not going to really show you anything. What I did was disconnect it from the cam sensor, disconnect it from the main connector, put the power probe through on one end, put my meter on the other end on voltage and alert. So if I hit the button and I get 12 volts there, I know it's good. I had it, and then I also jerked a little bit. There was the problem. How to fix it? Of course, trying to find ends for Volkswagen, unless you're Pierre here and work in a VW dealer.
Even I can't always get the ends.
I had to kind of make up a different wire connector that seemed to work. Okay, so we're going to move on with the next question.
Don't they specify?
Okay, we have here, Jim says, do you only need Dexos oil if you're going to for extended drains? No, I think the Dexos, they're pretty anal on making sure you have that.
You avoid your warranty if you don't have a Dexos oil in that engine.
Okay.
And I think you're still supposed to follow their mileage interval.
Absolutely.
Which are, in my opinion, insanely high.
Which is?
7,500. I think, I don't hold me to it, but I know the last one we did. Oh, it's kind of hard to say too because they're all using.
What vehicles are these?
It's just 2500 van, Chevy van. It's the one customer.
Was it 530?
Yeah, it's still a 530. But just
well, I've been getting a lot of problems with a lot of Toyotas and Hondas with the oil lights coming on and codes coming up for sticky solenoids, and because people are not doing their oil changes enough because they have this ingrained in their head that people think that they can go 5 or more 1,000 miles. You know, they go by the maintenance light whenever that lights up instead of going by the 3,000 miles we put on there.
Right.
So, and you know, I have customers with 150, 200,000 miles in their cars, but now because you know the engines are so good, they're lasting that long. But because they didn't do the oil changes as often as they should have, now they're starting to see some problems with engines. And I'm luckily saving some of these engines, but people really need to be aware that they need to change their oil. And people still, they'll come in and I'll tell them that oil changes due, it's got 3,000 miles on it. And they say, but I just did it. And they think it's a month ago, meanwhile it's 3 months ago. And I've had a couple where, you know, I had to tell them, listen, there's no oil on your dipstick. So,
Wow.
We see that at Volkswagen quite a bit. A lot of these new cars have 10,000 mile oil change interval specified.
Right.
And the people think that they can go 10,000 without checking it.
Right. And of course, they all have these sensors in there, and sometimes the
By the time the
sensor.
sensor goes off, sometimes it's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Mike.
no, well, Volkswagen or Audi has the sensor where it goes off for 1 quart. You go to put a quart in, there's no dipstick, you put a quart in and you're good. But those
But it
have
doesn't,
some
I'm
issues.
telling you, it's not always accurate.
Okay.
Well, Mike has a comment here. He says for the oil, 5 to 7,500 miles for non-synthetic. So, any other
5 to
questions?
7,500
5,000,
5,000 to 7,500.
For
for
non-synthetic.
non-synthetic.
Yeah.
And just for a further note, there was on,
Boy.
I saw it on the AOL thing, but it was from the Huffington Post. There was a whole article on how your mechanic or service provider is taking advantage, is still stressing the 3,000 mile oil change, that the manufacturers don't require that.
Right.
They're doing you a disservice.
That's not true, but that's what the public's hearing.
Right, that's what's.
The manufacturer's
being
trying to make the car
reported.
last 100,000 miles and crush it.
But I mean, that's what
That's
we're
what they want.
fighting. We know that, you know, those, and 5,000 is probably not bad, but my experience.
5,000 is only good for people that do 20,000 miles a year or more.
Right, but I mean, those people that say, yeah, okay, I'll do it at 5, well, they're probably gonna come in at 75 or 8 or 10. I mean, everyone, it's just the
Yeah, when
numbers over the stickers we write
right.
are crazy, and I'm sure you guys found.
And I don't know
the
what
same.
you guys on the web think about this, but when I was working at, when I had the BMW shop, they had gone to a 15,000 mile interval. I was recommending 5,000 miles on their synthetic because I knew that people would slip, just what Bear is saying. And so at 7,500, they were probably getting away with it. At 5,000, the engine were lasting pretty much forever. And in that realm, I was taking care of virtually all my customers, except for the ones obviously who went the full 15 and then they were cooking them at, you know, they were having trouble.
Now, Mike says Nissan recommends 3,500 mile oil service intervals.
Everybody's different.
Yeah, they're different.
Who was he saying was recommended at 5 to
Nissan.
7?
He just said for Mike 5 to 7,500 for non-synthetic. I don't think that's, you
It
know,
depends on the brand.
I guess depends on.
I don't
mean, if
yeah,
that's
I don't know who
his
is,
interpretation, or that's a manufacturer, we don't know.
Oh, here goes one from Ed Hassett. Hey, Ed. What is the reason do you think OEMs go with an extended oil change interval? Well, I would think one of the reasons, just in my opinion, the oils are a lot better, okay, and that's why they have viscosity checkers and oil sensors in the car. It's to save, with the synthetic oil, they're getting better mileage and stuff, and I think it's to save, you know, the oil for being discarded, pollution levels,
Right.
the whole thing.
My
and maintenance
understanding
costs.
Green issue.
My understanding is that it's two things, what I've told my customers for years, it's two things. One is, they want to look better to consumer reports on your cost of ownership. And number two, they negotiate with the EPA on their petroleum footprint
okay.
before they produce the car. And so part of the petroleum footprint is oil change intervals, lifetime fluids and things like trannies and diffs, having an MPG gauge in the car, all of that stuff.
Right. Here's another one from Jomar. He says, I guess 2010 BMW X5 recall oil change, or recommends probably oil change every 15,000 miles. Is this the recommendation?
That is,
Of BMW, yeah.
that is what BMW predicated their service interval on, the indicator in the car. And now, that's under, you know, some ideal condition. There are actually cars that go further than that before the thing indicates. And there are cars that go less mileage before it indicates. But 15,000 is the baseline number, yeah. I don't
Right.
I don't like it. I always told my customers I recommended something far more frequent. But that is BMW's recommendation. But then I go on to tell my customers, you can say this, BMW's number is predicated on a 100,000 mile, 6-year lifespan for the vehicle. They would like to chip it up and sell you a new one after that.
That they would.
If you can tell your customers that you want their car to last longer, and your professional opinion is whatever you come up with, then you're telling them as a professional that you're trying to make that car last longer.
Yeah. We got a couple of comments here. We got Jim says, real oil changes still seem to me to be a cheap maintenance safety blanket. I would agree.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I also heard that the cost per mile was the minimal goal. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Cost per mile is
Yeah.
part of it, yeah.
You know, they're always trying to save everything. That's the biggie. If they can tell the customers not a lot of maintenance costs, and all of these companies now want to do maintenance themselves. Another one here, I heard, Larry has a 88 Ford automatic transmission, goes back, will not go into first gear. So an 88 Ford with an automatic transmission goes in reverse, not into first gear.
Sounds internal.
It sounds like an internal problem. Obviously, always make sure the fluid is full. Does anyone else have any comments on that, what Larry should be checking? Kind of take up next month as far as tools, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We've got another one from Jim. I have heard about a few minis having timing chain problems after long drain intervals.
Long drain?
That means the extended oil change.
Extended oil change.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was true of BMWs as well.
I've seen three of them happen. One, the timing chain actually exploded down the street from my shop, and I had him go to the dealer and get it to the dealer, and it got covered under warranty. I saw another one. I heard it on one of my customers, and I told the customer about it, and they got it to the dealer in time. They covered it, and the third one, I think that the same thing happened. So yes, I've seen that.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. The amount of time without a tech looking over a car, which happens upon regular oil changes, is dangerous in some cases. 15,000 is a long time without a check over.
Yeah?
Well, I would agree, but you know, it's just like the filling stations years back. When you got your car filled up, the guy would check the oil when I first started,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, in an Esso station. So here back in United States, Esso has been gone for years. It's
Exxon now, right?
But up in Canada, other places, Esso still exists. I can tell you that is true if you're not checking stuff like before. How many people run around with low oil? You know, and some of these car manufacturers say, oh, a quart in 1,000 miles, that's normal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta be
VW
very
is one of
careful.
them.
Okay.
You know, I have customers that I'm monitoring them to make sure that, you know, what they're doing, and because it's happening too much. And I just had a car that I started up yesterday. He came in for an oil change. I started up, and you hear the valves tapping, but then it goes away as soon as you start it up. Right after you start it up, and he was overdue by 2,000 miles, and it was low by 2 quarters. There was nothing on dipstick. Again, I'm seeing it more and more.
We see this a lot
Sure.
at the dealer. And these things aren't leaking. It's consumption. It's burning it. And
They don't smoke like, you don't see it.
they don't smoke. You don't see it. The catalytic converter eats it all. And the people don't have a clue they're low. And they don't check anything. They don't check. They don't look at their tires.
Because those oil lights don't
They
work.
don't look at their
Until
fluids.
it's too late.
Yeah, here's what Ed says, low oil levels and worn out or incorrect oil will wreak havoc with the VVT engines,
Yes, absolutely.
no doubt.
There you go. Oh,
Very
sure.
Yep. So, what other stuff, Bear? What have you been coming across in your shop, Bear, that's been a issue or a problem? Move this to Bear. Have you had anything that,
Oh, no, we had an interesting Highlander come in just the other day. Customer called up and said he thought he blew a valve. I told him we don't really blow valves, we just drop a valve. But it was making bad noise, and so it was coming in on the hook, and I kind of thought maybe they used a flange on their O2 sensors, and this one has quite a few miles on it. It's an 03, that the nuts rust off and the O2 sensor will blow out of the pipe, or
And make a hell of a noise.
make a hell of a lot of noise. That's
Yeah.
what was my first inclination, but when it got there and we started, this has been a regular customer, and I think he bought it new, and we've serviced it, you know, since it was very new. And listening to it, it wasn't an O2 blown out, and it was hammered to beat the band on the front bank, and you put your hand on the plastic cover, you could feel it, and when you took the cover off, you put it on the one coil, that particular coil on plug has a healthy bolt and ear on it, so unlike the Fords, the coil didn't come ejecting out of up through the
Now,
cover.
did the spark plug unscrew, or was it
Well,
stripped, or?
That's where the story gets a little interesting. There's no threads left in the head. The customer, you know, claims it, you know, wasn't misfiring, running poorly, making any abnormal noises till all this occurred. But yet there's no ceramic left in the plug. There's no center electrode.
Wow.
Gone.
Severe
The-
detonation.
The plug looks like it was hammered into the coil for, you know, just didn't start popping, banging, and get turned off. So what really happened, I don't know. I know for a fact it has, at 90, in 6 of 07, we put plugs in it that the customer supplied, because he's a big internet guy with split fires or the latest, greatest.
Oh, that'll give you.
That might be his issue
Well, it
right
wasn't,
there.
I shouldn't say that, it wasn't that brand, but it was, he's like triple, quadruple platinums and, but anyways, but that was at 90,000 miles in June of
And
07.
now it's got 180?
Yeah, so.
Oh, it has nothing to do with that.
Right, so why that plug, what happened is, we don't know.
Could be defective sometimes.
Anybody else out there see something
I don't know
Yeah,
if we jacked it out of the cylinder, I'm
It's
just,
hard to say.
it's
hard to say,
chicken
yeah.
or egg,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of
yeah,
those.
yeah.
But I mean, usually they've been, pretty bulletproof motors. I mean, I know the Fords are great for blowing the plugs out.
Yeah.
I've heard one of our tool guys said now the Hondas have come out with a similar tool to put the insert in, because they've been spitting some
Plugs out?
Plugs out. Now whether, it's a manufacturing issue, which it's definitely that case on the Ford,
Right.
or improper installation in other cases. I don't know about these other ones, but
Right.
that's was the one pre-Christmas interesting.
Okay.
Well,
Hang on here, we got a
Okay.
couple of comments before you go. Jim says, I always push people I work with to check the fluids on every car because I expect the customer to do anything period and drive it. That's true, you don't expect your
Right.
customers nowadays, they go in, some of them don't even have a clue what's under the plastic cover under the hood,
That's right.
right? And now
Forget
they're
that,
gonna look
some
for
of them don't
dipstick.
even know how half the buttons in the car
No,
are.
I don't like this. Okay, read that.
Okay, edit, I expect the customer to do nothing except drive. Jim, you're probably right. That's what most people really do.
Yeah.
So when a vehicle does come in, it's a real good idea to check it. Now, I know Craig that runs a shop where he has an account, we'll just say, because we don't want to say what type of account it is, but they run a fleet of vehicles, and he's been running this account for months. They have not changed the oil of one vehicle. They only check and top off. Now, that's not because Craig doesn't want to change oil. The owner doesn't want to change the oil. But yet they've done 3 motors so far in those amount of time, so.
And they beat these vehicles to death.
To that.
Wow.
But preventative maintenance, in my opinion, is very important. The oil is like the blood in our body.
Right.
If you have high cholesterol, you're gonna wind up with a heart attack and die.
I've been
You
saying
know,
that for years.
the oil is really good. Now, here's another one from Mike. What do you guys think about leaving spark plugs in for 100,000 miles?
Never liked it.
Me either.
I'm not a fan of that. I mean,
60,000.
60 to 75 was my recommendation on 100,000 mile interval spark plugs.
yeah, he had a Acura TL05, 108 thou on it. The electrode burned out, ping pong in the cylinder.
Yeah, and then they
Yeah.
can seize it to the cylinder
Yeah.
to boot,
Well, adhesion.
into the head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
adhesion, Mike, is a biggie. The 2 dissimilar metals, I mean, you'll rip the plugs out, the threads out of the cylinder, but the plug will come out okay. I know someone wrote a great article in Motor Magazine, actually, on anti-seize, but I kind of disagree with it, because years back I did a whole bunch of stuff with adhesion on a cylinder head, even cut a cylinder head apart, and I still have that piece of cylinder head, by the way. But if you use too much anti-seize, yes, you will cause the electrode to have a problem, the insulator to have a problem.
You're messing with the ground path.
Right. If you put a correct amount, a dab, and moving around your finger, not like this big gob on there, the gob's gonna leak down, and of course you're gonna have a
Remember the
problem.
old Brill Cream commercials? A little dab will do you? That's
it.
what you
So,
gotta do with the
I think that's
anti-seize.
good.
I heard of that, Pierre, I don't remember it.
I have another one here. Here's Rich, had a O2 Envoy come in. You guys are being real good tonight, even though we have no video. But again, you'll be able to see this later on.
Keep it that way.
I had an O2 Envoy come in with a miss on number 6. Okay, no engine noise. After checking everything, I pulled the plug out, it was smashed. Eventually found out that the top of the piston came off due to loose sleeves slipping down. Wow, later a bulletin was released. I'm telling you, no engine noise. Wow,
Wow.
Rich, that's a pretty good tip, man. I haven't heard of that one. Replaced engine under warranty, inline 6.
Wow.
So you know they had a problem.
They have a problem.
Rich,
Yeah.
we appreciate that tip. By the way, any of you guys have tips out there that you ever want to email in if you have any pictures? We always have a TST newsletter once a month. We'll give you
Right.
full credit, give us your name and all that, and any pictures you can supply. This will help a lot of our guys out there in our field, so.
Yeah, we'll give you
Okay.
credit for it.
One of the
Here's one
reasons for
with
TST
Jim here.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pierre. I'm sure it's hard on coil unplugged to have any gap erosion at all. I think the voltage rise makes the coils overheat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
that
yeah.
is true.
Oh, yeah, they cook.
And they're not cheap. That is true. If what happens with coil unplug, as BMW used to say, it was a machine, so the machine should get boots on it at X amount of miles and the plug should be changed. But as we said before, people are keeping them in over 100,000 miles. Now, 100,000 miles, if everything was hunky-dory maybe in the perfect world,
Yeah.
no one drives in the perfect world.
No.
So I'm not a big fan of that.
Well, you have to know what's happening also, as as the electrodes wear on there, the doggone voltage is building higher and higher and higher and
Well,
higher.
that's what he was saying,
You know,
yeah,
right? So
That's
that's,
Here's another comment from Jomar here. There was a video on the Welds website that Jim, in the last presentation, told us to go and watch on the cons of anti-seize on plugs. They even took it to the lab to explain it all. Yeah, I've seen that, but I gotta tell you, in my personal opinion, I've been doing them right for years. I never had any of them foul. If you don't put it on there and it takes the threads out, or you can't get the plug out, like on some of those Fords, you'll really kick yourself in the butt. First of all, I use the top of the line copper anti-seize by Permatex, not some cheap brand. You know, you get some of these cheapies out there, it's pure garbage. And I know people want to save a few bucks, they'll put the aluminum one on there. Use the right stuff with the small amount and you won't have adhesion in the plug. Start the plug also with a rubber hose or an old spark plug
Definitely.
loop. I've been doing that for years.
Yep.
Even with a long screwdriver.
Always start the plug by hand.
By hand.
And it's
So-
gotta feel good. If it feels like it's binding, you gotta
Well,
chase
watch
that
about-
thread out.
This is a family show. Feeling good, it's the whole other ballgame.
Yeah, that's Jerry.
Rubber hose rocks, okay. Ed has
talking
something
about
here.
rubber hoses.
I gotta go, wife is yelling, oh, okay, sorry, Merry Christmas to you guys, to Ed as well. Hey, guys, we really appreciate this. Pierre, I had to cut you before, because these things were rolling in, and these guys are on a roll.
You cut me off too, so I have a tip.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a 2002 Toyota Camry with 4-cylinder, that 200,000 miles. The head gasket went because the head bolts, the threads loosened up or, went bad. Now there's a bulletin or whatever, they came up with a fix, and I was trying to find an engine for this thing, and it's too expensive. The car is in beautiful shape except for the engine. So I decided to get the threads fixed. I had my machine shop do it, and I'm going to put the engine back together. But just so you guys know, there is a fix for it. You don't have, if the engine was running good before, the engine will still run good, and you can save the engine.
Now, when you guys do head bolts, obviously to talk to yield bolts, you have to replace. When you put a head bolt in, do you use any Loctite on the head bolt?
Loctite? No, absolutely not.
No?
They usually come, the ones I've dealt with BMW come with a special graphite coating on them. You're not supposed to clean them. You do have to clean the holes very carefully. You can't have any liquids
Right,
down the
but
holes.
it changes torque, by the way.
Of course. But on that note, I've seen on older BMW engines, like what they call the M20 motor, that originally came with a non-torque to yield bolt, and they later changed it. I've actually seen engines that consume oil after a head job because the torque to yield bolt spec actually distorts the cylinders. And I don't know a good answer. I mean, I've experimented a little bit. I think probably backing off a little bit on that angle, if they make you do 2 tightenings of 90 degrees, maybe you do 190 and 145 or something like that. I think even though that busts everybody's theory of how to do it. But the bottom line is you don't want an engine that you've now got an oil burner because it's actually distorting the block. They're over tightening them, I think.
Yeah. And we have one here from Jomar again. Cadillac for stripped head bolts. Didn't they have some?
Oh, yeah, there's a
Yeah.
whole time cert.
Yeah.
BMW
Set
had
up
that
from
too. I never liked it though,
Kent
because it was
Moore.
only after a big overheat in BMW.
Yeah, but you guys never
don't like
used the light duty Loctite?
The blue?
The blue?
Not on a head.
Not on
bolt,
head
no.
bolts,
Not
no.
unless in the specs called for it.
Never.
I've heard, you know,
Because it always made the bolts come out easier later on. I used to use it all the time, never had a problem with a motor, but
No, I
Just-
never did
just
that.
what I did.
Never
Okay.
Loctite on head bolts.
Okay.
On rod bolts, oh yeah, red Loctite.
all right, so we get our video. Oh, we got our video back.
Ah.
Okay, so now
Very good.
you,
So now you can see our ugly faces again.
so
Now
far.
you can do your
Okay,
video.
so,
Yeah, you
yeah,
can-
talk about something else while we make sure that everything is hunky-dory.
What I was gonna say on the spark plug subject, we kinda got distracted a little bit. You really should be torquing spark plugs. I've seen an awful lot of spark plugs over the years that are bleeding combustion gases between the ceramic and the metal casing because they were over tightened.
Over tightened, sure, distortion.
And yes, when they're torqued properly, I really very rarely see that. So you just, I mean, we do it. I think we gun them in or whatever. We use an air ratchet, and it's fast. Time is money. Yada yada yada. But
Who would use an air ratchet?
I've seen it done.
I've seen it, and
Well, Snap-on has an air ratchet that torques it down to 12 plus
Bless you.
12
12
foot-pounds.
Right
Yeah.
there you go.
I would never
Bless
take a
you. God bless
chance
you.
cracking porcelain.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is, I'm telling you, it happens, and I've seen it. So just don't do that, guys. You can, you know, take a little extra time to make sure it works the lifetime that it's supposed to.
Okay, now we have here, Jim says, I love time certs, but some of those kits really bring a tear to your
Yeah.
eye on the cost.
Oh, on the cost?
I've heard,
Absolutely.
oh, yeah, some of those
Yeah,
engine-specific ones are painful.
Yeah.
that's true. But, you know, and it's very hard to explain to these customers to extract money out of them for something that's really not your problem.
Right.
I mean, that is.
It is your problem, but it's not your fault.
Yeah, that is
Well-
an issue. Right, it's always your problem,
It's always your problem.
but not your fault. You had something to say, Neil?
No, just tear to your eye. That's.
Going
that's
back
right.
to your anti-seize, G, I think, I agree with you, and I think what goes along with that, if, you know, it's again, like in moderation, it's good, and if you notice, a lot of your oxygen sensors, if still come with anti-seize in it, or a small little packet of the copper
Yes.
anti-seize.
Right.
And I think if there was a big issue, like they're saying with the spark plug, I mean, if it's drooling down on it, it's an issue.
Right.
But I mean, a little
Doesn't
judiciously
hurt.
applied
Not
to
gonna
the,
hurt it.
to the thread, I don't- you
Now,
know, I don't think that across the board that, like Jim kind of implied that across the board that anti-seize on plugs was a no-no.
Right, I disagreed with him on that, and Jim did a great job, and,
Yeah. No,
you know, we all do different things, but again, I've had many vehicles that I put them on all my customers' vehicles years back.
For hundreds
My
of
own-
thousands of miles.
Hundreds of thousands, not one problem.
Right.
Yes, when I would see a guy gop the stuff on it,
That's bad.
Right.
first of all, what's in the anti-seize are these little glass beads and stuff, and that's gonna really screw you up, because it's a poor ground, isn't it?
Sure.
So there's an issue with that. Now, one of the other things here, here goes Jim again, stainless steel and exhaust like O2s are a must if you ever want to take them out. We just definitely.
There you go.
I mean, no doubt, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, the other thing we want to kind of show you guys to switch it up, and I know you can't see it from out there, so you could see this later on. We are really having a issue,
Oh,
I
the
thought
video
we-
stopped again?
something with the cable.
Oh, okay.
You know, but at any rate, we'll fix that by our next webcast. We apologize, but let's
I got a quick tip.
move on here. I got a tip here. I have this OTC tool that's called the Ready Scan Pro. Comes with a little cable. This little thing plugs in. Real good when you're working on a car and you want to know that the monitors are, you know, set or not. This little thing goes in the OBD2 connector, red lights come on. if the monitors are set, green lights come on, and then you get a chirp. And a chirp will happen every 5 minutes if all the monitors are set. Now, this comes in super handy when you want that customer not to come back every day to get your car inspected or whatever. You know, you get their credit card as a deposit, you leave it in, and you tell them when it's all green and you get a chirp within 5 minutes, this tool is telling you the monitors are ready.
Oh.
You could also go on, and I took this out here, printed the screenshot. You could also go on and look at, let's say you only want one monitor. I switched the EGR, had a defective EGR. I put it in the software. All this thing is going to look for is the EGR to go. So when the customer hears the chirp, sees the light turn green, you're ready to rock and roll.
He knows it's fixed.
He knows it's fixed and he can come back there. So a great little tool that just kind of goes into the OBD2 port. You know, I thought it's a good time-saving type of tip. And, you know, next month we do have our top 10 TST awards coming up. Who knows? Maybe that one would make it. How much? We don't really know. I believe it's like 70 some odd dollars, probably less, and I think that's list price. Now, the next little tool I want to speak about real quick is how many of you guys out there are using a battery maintainer? A battery maintainer,
You all should.
is something you're going to need. You know, just like today, you know, the guys were working on air suspension in the vehicle on a BMW. Now, what you really need on that vehicle is some sort of battery maintainer. And they put one on, because you got the key on, this thing's gonna go dead in 45 minutes or so.
Right.
You're running a lot of computers on board.
Then you'll have codes everywhere.
Yeah. Now, this particular setup here is called PowerMax. Okay, so this PowerMax unit, this is a 75 amp one. They have 55 amp and they have 100 amp. The nice thing is, the list price for a 55 amp, $299. 75 amp, like I'm holding here in my hand, with a handle that has a rubber boot. That didn't come with the shipment, something happened, you know, but it does come with a rubber boot. Nice long cables. The cable ends even have the side terminal set up. So if you look at it, you can put this on a side terminal or a regular terminal.
And it's got little like tabs on the bottom. You could bolt it to your whatever battery charger card or whatever
Yeah,
you've got.
when I had it on the car today, the AC voltage on this is minimal. I took this against other brands out there. I don't want to get into the brands because, you know, make some people cranky. But this thing not only puts out 14 plus volts, but the AC voltage is so minimal. It's like 30 millivolts or so AC, and compared to some of the top testers,
Right.
this is very, very good. So for a reasonable price, you know, 75 amps, BMW is using it, fuse protected in the back, pretty neat setup. So how many of you guys out there are currently using either a smart battery charger like the Associated Neutronics good units or anything else? How many guys are, you know, putting that on a car so nothing happens, nothing goes dead?
And we're not just talking on reprogramming or reflashing, whatever,
Right.
recoding. We're talking about diagnosing, scanning, you know, whatever. Working on
Correct.
the car.
So, well, I guess we have no one doing that, or no one interested in it. Okay, so we need to come up with a couple of more things for the next 10 minutes on our round table.
Well, we were talking about oil, and I forgot to tell you that I have 2 engine jobs in my shop. One was a 2010 Jeep Wrangler 3.8, where these twin boys had this car, and they decided to do their own oil changes, and I guess they didn't check it, and the oil filter started leaking, and they tried to get it warranted. The mother and father tried to get a warranty from the dealer, and the dealer would not do it.
Of course not.
Because they didn't have the, you know, any documentation. So actually my guy just called me now to tell me that that car is done. And I have a 2006 Saturn Vue with the Honda motor in it. That oil change was not done since it was due in July 2010 from my sticker, and he hadn't done it, and it was 20,000 miles, and he
Oh my
expected it
God.
to still keep going. So, you know.
Oops.
And then I see the guy's wife a couple of days ago because they don't communicate, she just got a recently new car, and I asked her how many miles she put on the car. 10,000 miles. Have you had an oil change done yet? No. So she's supposed to come in.
You know, absolutely amazing.
This is a chronic thing, and there have been various schemes. Manufacturers call you, or they send emails to you, but if the people don't come in and they ignore it, there's really no cure other than to put that new motor in once they smoke it, right?
Yeah, that is true. We got Rich here, says he's going to put a maintainer on the list. Good move, Rich.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maintain is pretty important.
Save you a battery, or save you at least trouble, you know, aggravation.
Let me bring this question here. What do you guys think is one of the biggest problems facing the automotive industry today, or your shop today? And Joe Moore wants to know the name of the two products. The OTC was the monitor, while you guys are thinking. The OTC Ready Scan Pro is the thing to check monitors. And PowerMax, a company that makes the battery maintainer. And we got a VW question here. Oh boy. 1999 Jetta takes forever to heat up. New thermostat. When the thermostat was out, I was able to touch the water pump, and it wasn't cracked. Duct temperatures around
stop right there.
85 to 90 degrees. Any recommendations?
First of all, the fact that the impeller was not cracked does not necessarily mean that it is still spinning on the pump properly.
That is true.
You really needed to make sure that that impeller was tight on the shaft.
So, what was this?
And I've had some of those where
Yes,
the
I've seen
impeller
that.
is spinning on the shaft.
But it's in one piece still.
Yep, it's in one piece, but it's like stripped on there, so rather than
And sometimes
really
the
moving,
lines are just kind of contacting it, so it only slips, you know, at 2,000 RPM instead of at idle.
oh, he says this, hang on. He sees flow in the coolant bottle.
It's not an ironclad test, but it's a start. Now, the other question is, does he know if he has air bubbles or anything like that in the core, to the core? Has he checked for air?
Mike, have you checked for air? Because bleeding, something like the thing they make from
Airlift.
Airlift.
Airlifts work good.
Oh, airlifts are great. I have one of my
And
box.
has he used the pyrometer to check the temperature on top?
Yeah, now.
He said he bled the core, but a lot of times bleeding, you know, at the core.
Okay, here's the thing now. If there's been contamination in this
Oh,
car.
he used the airlift.
He did use airlift. If there's been contamination
You
in
usually
this
get it
car, the original cores, I think the one with the copper tubes, have a little bypass between the inlet and the outlet. So if the core gets plugged up, the coolant will bypass and flow through, but it's not actually going through the core. It's going in and out without actually making the core hot enough. You might have a partial blockage of that core. And the blocks on those
Chrysler's
engines,
used to do that all
the
the
blocks
time.
on those engines do not have block drains. So if anybody in the history of that vehicle has used a sealant, we've run into this a few times. We have one at the shop right now like this. It's a Passat, but it's the same problem. And
It's a Volkswagen, that's the main problem.
the problem was somebody dumped 2 cans of bars leaks or something like that in there.
Well, if one was
And we
good,
can't
two was
get-
better.
And we can't get rid of all of it. We flushed the hell out of this thing. The only way to get this thing clean would be to dismantle this motor.
Yeah, and hot tank it.
And we've already changed the heater core twice in 2 years. And we
Hey.
can't get rid of all the stuff that's entrained in the rest of the system, and we have tried every trick we can think of.
Beautiful.
Short of
Hopefully-
taking the motor apart. So the bottom line is this: if you think the core is blocked, you could try flushing, and it may have some effect, but you're not going to get all that stuff out of the bottom of the block. The best thing I can say is, while the water pump's out, you're already selling a big job, try to use something like a power washer to blow through those that block around the cylinders. You know, get it in one side to try to get that crap that's in the bottom out, because it's going to sit there and little by little get dislodged and end up in the heater core.
Okay. Here, we got a couple of comments here. Jim says, one of the problems for his shop is affording equipment to scan as many cars, the systems as possible. We're
Yeah.
still trying to keep up and afford the cost of equipment to be competitive.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough.
You know, that is, and Mike says, by the way, thank you. Jim, I would have to agree with you. You know, nowadays, as my son constantly tells me, because he runs a shop, he says that, you know, this is a different ball game than years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many different systems now than just 10 years ago that are on a car, and you do have to invest in so many different pieces of equipment to go in, you know, from everything from a smoke machine, have CO2 in your shop, have, you know, multiple factory scan tools. If you really want to fix these cars, you're going to need this equipment. And how do you afford all this equipment?
That's it.
I had a budget every single year, and I always busted the budget. I don't think I had a year the last 10 years in business that I didn't go over the budget substantially.
Yeah. Now, you know, some guys, I like what they do. I like what they do with the budget. I used to take a percentage of money and put it into a special account. Every week, I'd see what the numbers I did in the shop, and I'd stick that in, knowing I got to buy not only updates. Okay, updates you could pretty much afford, but I'm going to have to buy some new equipment.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And tried to specialize in some stuff. I mean, I got away from doing wheel alignments, then I got away from doing
Full
tires,
equipment.
because I had so much drivability stuff to do that I focused more on electrical and drivability and stayed away from tires were minimal to me when everyone was cutting each other's throat.
Yeah, I
And
never-
here you had to go buy this new Corgi tire machine or
Yeah.
this new Hunter or whatever and spend a gazillion dollars
I didn't
on
make
something.
money on tires at the end.
No, it's a tough business. You know, my son has gotten into it. He says he does okay with it, but I think it's a cutthroat business where I try to say, I'm saving my money up for diagnostic stuff because it is pretty hard. The other thing here, ever use a OTC pulser to clean out the core?
I don't know that tool.
Yeah, I don't even know that.
But the concept of pulsing, you know, if somebody had some kind of an ultrasonic cleaner that could rattle that core, that might help. I don't know how you'd rattle the core though, because the actual core is
Pretty fragile.
pretty fragile
Pretty
and unacceptable to you.
Yeah.
You can't really reach the core. But I don't know what that pulsar is, but the idea is...
Okay, here's what he said. He said you hook it up to shop air and a water hose. I had something like that. I
That
didn't
might
know.
work, that might help, I don't know, could
It's like a
work.
pressure washer.
Yeah, but
like,
it's not super high pressure.
It
The idea is
does the pulse.
Right.
Yeah.
use air bubbles to break stuff.
To break stuff
Sounds like
loose.
a good thought.
Yeah. Now, Mike, if you tried that and you reverse flushed it and did it, you know, so for years he's used it. Yeah, I had that. I had one of those. And sometimes that does get it out. But what I found is sometimes when those heater cores get clogs in it, or like you said, any stop leak has been put in there,
Yeah,
you know, people would come in with a lot of those Chryslers years back with head gasket problems, so they pour junk in there.
yeah.
Then they get the heater problem, then it starts
That's right.
overheating,
Yeah.
okay? And you could clean that core out,
And
but
paste
now
that crap in.
it just keeps coming back. It's like a nightmare from hell.
Well, it sounds like that's a slippery slope, and
Yeah.
if the fellow puts that effort in, and he does get it better, or working, well, now you're married to it.
That one that I'm
Now-
talking about, that we have at the shop now, they changed the core a year and a half ago before I started this job at this place. They had to change it again, I think March of last year, and now the car's back again with minimal heat. And we have flushed this thing aggressively. But I know that this car had, like the bottom of the Mississippi in the expansion tank when it came in the first time. And even though the fluid looks clean today, the coolant looks clean, it's residue is what it is. It's residue hiding in the corners of the block.
And the passages in the heater cores are so fine anymore.
Yeah, they
It's
can't
not-
take much.
It's not like
Yeah,
what
they can't
people
take
are
much like
thinking
they
of
used
it
to.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Bear. And you know, sometimes people mixing different antifreezes
Yeah, that's a problem.
also causes a problem that
That's
they,
cool and
yeah,
regular
and they
stuff.
don't understand how this is gonna.
Oh, in this case,
come
that's
up.
not the case here, I don't think,
No.
anyway, but we've only got one.
I think
you
he's
know.
right. Hey, we have a few more minutes left, and you guys out there, if you have any other questions before we kind of move on. We had a guy, oh, here, Jim's back, I'm sorry. I had a Chrysler B-Series work van for a carpet guy, and the only way to get rid of the rust out of his cooling system was to install a remote cooling filter
Yeah.
and base after flushing. Yeah, those-
Yeah, that sounds like the only answer.
that works pretty good, by the way, because some of those, when you get the real rust in there, you know, just trying to keep getting it out.
But in that
I'm not
VW,
familiar
you'd
with
have,
coolant
depending on the
filter.
motor, you might not have a place for it.
Where,
They
The
put a filter in the
trucks,
hose.
you
I
put a-
understand.
Yeah,
It's a
trucks,
truck thing,
you
a
can,
truck thing.
Napa used to sell something for trucks that you can clean them up.
But in the VW,
I don't know where he got
especially the
his.
ones with a V6 in them, you're gonna be hard pressed to find real estate in that engine compartment to put that thing.
And one small
Right.
enough for the.
Where did
Yeah,
he
one
get
high.
his?
Absolutely.
Hey, you know, here's a question. I know years back I got it, Jim, where did you get that filter to install in there? Years back I got from Napa. The guy down the road, because he used to carry a lot of heavy duty truck stuff.
Right.
So, if you could tell us, Jim, that'd be helpful. I can see Jomar likes that, idea as well, and that'd be helpful to all.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
I have
those
a car in my
little,
shop right now that needs it.
those little filters that they have in the air conditioning
Air
line?
Yes, the same idea.
Airstep does that?
Same idea.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because these things catch all that before you ruin something.
Right.
You pop them out, you stick
You
the one
throw
in.
another one in, right?
So it works good. So far, Jim has it up. Jim, yeah, Wix and Napa and CarQuest,
Wix.
all Wix products.
Oh, there you go.
There you
So
go.
there you go.
Yeah.
So contact your CarQuest, Napa, or Wix, and by the way, Wix are phenomenal filters.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
are some of the best out there. So, anything else, gentlemen? Anything else on your mind? Don't forget, guys, tell your friends. We thank you for your time, especially at this time of year. All of us here at TST wish you a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
And a safe new year.
Yep, and
Absolutely.
please, oh, and here, one last thing. See, this guy's so good. This guy Jim is telling us he thinks the filter number is 24069.
Wow.
All right.
A number, part number.
24069.
Yeah, write that down.
So you may want to write that down. Neil here is going to run out tomorrow morning. He says
Buy one
before
for
he
a
gets
car
his
he has at the
coffee,
shop.
he is getting one. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Merry
all.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Kwanzaa.
Happy holidays.
So again, good night. We'll see you soon.